Hey guys, it's crazy that this story won't die out. In fact, like it keeps changing. It's ridiculous, but it keeps popping up. It's like whack-a-mole. And I'm going to whack it and knock it back down. I've become kind of an expert on this story in a way, so I kind of feel like it's my duty, my obligation almost, to kind of set the record straight. So I initially made a video really doing a deep dive into the whole Steven Seagal, Gene LeBell thing. And I based it on logic and what makes sense, going through all the different details. Fact or fiction, I came to the conclusion that it was definitely fiction. So then I actually followed it up with an interview with one of the stunt guys that was on set, Steven Lambert, and he talked about it in his book, by the way, From the Streets of Brooklyn to the Halls of Hollywood. Check that book out, by the way, on Amazon. I'll link it in the description below because there's that story and a whole lot more interesting stuff. But anyway, he squashed the urban myth as well. Furthermore, I had the actual stunt coordinator, Conrad Palmisano, talk about it. And his version was similar, but a little bit different than Steven Lambert's, but it was the same conclusion. Steven Seagal never got choked out. He never defecated or pissed or anything like that. It's all ridiculous. That never happened. So the story pops up here. Here's a video. The day Gene LeBell choked out Steven Seagal, Freddie Prinze Jr. was guest in Gene's home at the time. So now Freddie Prinze Jr. is telling the story, but oh boy, does he really mix up some details. I mean, how can you trust him if he doesn't even know what movie it was on? So anyway, let's go ahead and watch this because he says some other interesting stuff too.
And he had the legendary, depends on who you believe, how far it went. The altercation was Steven Seagal.
I'll tell you the exact story. I was at his house when he got fired.
Okay, we're going to get the exact story. Let's see how many details he mixes up, though.
Really?
Oh, this is
my God. Yeah, please tell the story because there's so many urban myths about that. What happened?
Gene doesn't get mad at me for telling this. He loves it. So he was on the set of Under Siege, and he was the fight choreographer.
Under Siege? It never happened on Under Siege. It took place on Marked for Death. There's no doubt because Steven Lambert knows for a fact that he was working with another stuntman named Lincoln Simons, and the only movie they worked on together, the only Seagal movie they worked on together, was Marked for Death. Furthermore, Conrad Palmisano talked about the whole reason Gene was even there. Conrad got him on set to ride his quad runner on a dirt road. The dirt road you see at the beginning of Marked for Death when Steven Seagal's wearing all black. So it was on that dirt road. So 100% was not on Under Siege. It was definitely on Marked for Death based on various real evidence and eyewitness testimony and accounts. Oh, and the part about, Gene being the fight choreographer, he was never a fight choreographer on any Steven Seagal movie. He was simply there as a stunt guy. Conrad Palmisano, the stunt coordinator, actually did him a favor by letting him bring his quad runner on the set so he could, write it off for some tax work-related purposes and put a camera on there and film some of the guys in the movie running. That was why Gene was on there. Nothing to do with fight choreography.
And to know Gene is to know he's been a stuntman in Hollywood since before I was born, and I'm 46, okay? So he's always the old redhead.
That's crazy. So Freddie Prinze Jr. is 46. I'll be 42 next month. He literally looks like my father. Crazy, man. Not aging too good, unfortunately.
That guy that gets beat up and somehow can still take a big-time bump at 137 years old.
That's like Mr. Briscoe.
Thanks, John.
So he has a stopwatch to make sure that his guys, when they're doing their fight choreography, are in time for what the director's needs are. He always wears it around his neck. He did it on every movie that he did this on. And Steven was going way too hard. Oh, I'll tell you a great Seagal story for this too. Steven was going way too hard on all of Gene's guys and not pulling his punches and just.
Yeah, so as far as if Steven Seagal is going too hard, hitting the stunt guys, it's hard to say because you do want to make these hits look more realistic. Now, you don't have to hit him in the face or anything, but body shots, you do got to make a little impact. Even Van Damme's done that. So I could see how somebody like Van Damme or Seagal or other actors, action guys would want to make some contact to make it look more realistic. And you could tell as an audience member watching it. Now, I don't think stuntmen should get blasted per se, but it does look better on film if there's at least like a little bit of contact.
Straight up wailing on him and saying, I want it to look real. And Gene had a confrontation with him. And he said, it's the director's job to make it look real. That's why he put the camera here. And that's why he puts the camera here. It's my guy's job to make you look great. And it's your job to protect my goddamn man. And Steven didn't like that. And so he had a problem. Gene went back to the director. They did the take again. Steven didn't pull any punches. And Gene takes off his stopwatch that he times the fight thing for. He puts it around the neck of his assistant and he says, keep this. When I get back, I'm going to be fired. And he walks up to Steven, front chokes him, yanks him in, rips him up like this, and Steven pissed his pants and dropped to the ground.
See, that's crazy. Like, there's no version of the story, even the very negative ones, that says Gene just walked up to Steven and put him in a front choke. Like, first of all, every version you hear, if they were like kind of horsing around, exchanging some technique, whatever, but it was really like a rear choke for one, not a front choke. For two, there's no version of the story. And again, I interviewed eyewitnesses, Steven Lambert, stuntman.
Anybody who says otherwise about this story are liars.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple, because they weren't there.
Conrad Palmisano, stunt coordinator.
There's two martial arts artists playing with each other for a moment, but there was never anything violent. There was never anger.
There's no version where Gene LeBell just walked up to Steven and just choked him. That is absolutely ridiculous. So I don't know what the agenda or the objective is by putting out all this like misinformation. Like, I don't know if he wants a job, with CNN or what. It's crazy though, man.
And Gene comes home pissed. I'm in his condo with his wife and my godfather, okay? And he had Playboy TV back in the 80s on a satellite, and I would sneak in and watch it from time to time. I loved going to Uncle Gene's house. And so he comes in and he's pissed. I mean, he comes in, the door swings open, blam, blam, and I hear him tell the whole story, cussing like a sailor to Bob. I think Pat Johnson was there, who was another old school martial arts badass. Burleson was there, a whole gang of just old school killers. And all these guys called Steven out on the cover of Black Belt magazine and said, we think you're bullshit. We all want to fight you. And it was all because of this Under Siege incident.
I do remember that Black Belt magazine. I think it's called The Dirty Dozen. And I want to cover that on the channel. I think it was like Bob Wall and Benny the Jet Urquidez and a bunch of other guys that supposedly challenged Steven Seagal.
And he said, well, I only fight to the death. And all of them, Gene first said, okay. And he never fought one of them. He didn't want any of those guys.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. And I do believe that about Steven. So, look, you got martial arts techniques for, like, demonstrations. You got martial arts techniques for combat sports. And you got martial arts techniques for, like, true self-defense where you could potentially maim or kill somebody. So that's really what Steven is heavily trained in. Obviously the demonstrations as well, and he does those like spectacularly, but the real world self-defense where you could literally incapacitate a guy. Steven Seagal is not a sports fighter. So, another point I want to make, as much as I love Jean-Claude Van Damme, I think that's the reason why Steven Seagal never fought him back in the late 90s at Stallone's mansion in Miami. Because it wouldn't have been like a competition fight, which Van Damme has competed in. Check out my video of Van Damme's real fights, by the way. But it wouldn't have been like that. It would have been, Van Damme might have been fighting something between that and just like a street fight, where Steven Seagal would have fought like a much different fight, a much uglier fight. So I'm glad that actually never took place. It's also probably the reason why Seagal just ignored or never accepted that challenge years ago that George Foreman put out to Seagal. Because again, George Foreman is a great boxer, but why would Steven Seagal box him? Why would Steven Seagal even have a sporting competition against George Foreman? Steven Seagal, again, he's going to use techniques that wouldn't even be legal. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments section. Are you guys sick and tired of hearing about this Gene LeBell choked out Steven Seagal story? And if so, doesn't it just annoy you at this point that they're just changing so many details? So that alone's got to tell you, like, these people don't know what they're talking about, man. Like, you got Joe Rogan saying a version of it. You got Kevin Hart saying a different version. You got Ronda Rousey with her version. You got Freddie Prinze Jr. with his version. And none of those people were there. The people were there. There weren't many. Steven Lambert, Conrad Palmisano. You could hear it from them in my videos. So, again, we got to just squash this story. It's just getting absolutely ridiculous at this point.